Hello.
Hello, Dr. Mohan. Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Mohan.
Good evening, Sridhar.
Welcome back. And the session has started. We are live now.
Yeah, so that's nice. Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to you all. Sridhar and I will be your host today for this evening session of CCEM. So we shall wait for, there are 30 people already on board, so that's very nice. So what I would do is to go through the program schedule for the evening today, and we're going to have two research papers, EcoStar Energy Conservation in Swift through Tired Storage Architecture by Shreya, Sandhya, Shivakumar, Sanjay, and Falachandra from PES University, Bengaluru. Another paper on sub-object data augmentation and custom loss functions for automated anatomical landmarks localization in 3D brain MR images by Srinivas Rao Kundeti, Mohammad Afzal Ansari, Ahmad Sanin, Sumit Sharma, Jeevan, Philips Research, Philips Care, Philips Healthcare, IIC Bangalore, and IIT Allahabad. So two research papers followed by three short papers. After that, we have the important program of CCM, the Student Project Showcase program. There are 6 selected. Student Project Showcase will be presented to the audience at large. So on that note, let me start the evening session with a warm welcome to you all. Sridhar and I will do the honors for this. So I will do the first part, which is the research papers track, and Sridhar will do the honors for the Student Project Showcase track. So Shashi is our digital chair. He's been doing a wonderful job all through these days. So Shashi, I shall do the research full papers track hosting. Am I right? Is that the session now?
Yes.
And after that, you're going to change the session and we'll go into the research short papers track. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me call up the presenter for the first paper on EcoStar, Energy Conservation in Swift through Tired Storage Architecture.
Yeah, I'm now inviting Shreya. Shreya, yeah. Shreya, I think you do not,
Oh,
you have to give camera and mic permissions.
Yeah, she's already come on board.
Okay, good.
Would we also be able to add Sanjay and Sandhya as well, because we will be presenting together?
Sure, I'm adding one by one. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sanjay? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sridhar.
Sanjay, can you start sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sandhya? Yeah.
Yes.
So all of you are from various, you're all from PES University, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so is everybody able to see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to see.
Okay.
Okay. A very good evening to one and all present here. We are here to present our paper EcoStar, Energy Consumption Optimization in Swift through Tiered Architecture. I am S.S. Shreya, and I have here with me Sanjay K. and Sandhya Shivakumar to showcase our work. So the three of us graduated from PES University in June 2020, and the work in this paper was conducted as part of our BTech final year project under the guidance of Professor H.L. Falachandra. So I would like to quickly set the context for this presentation by highlighting some of the energy consumption characteristics of data centers. So the amount of global data created today is mind-boggling. 2.5 exabytes of data are created every day. Roughly 94% of this data is served by data centers. To serve this massive amount of data, about 500,000 data centers have been set up worldwide. Today, data centers have grown into a $200 billion industry, which consumes tremendous amounts of energy. 250 terawatt hour of power was consumed last year alone by data centers. Not all of this energy is produced by renewable sources, and it is estimated that data centers alone are responsible for 100 metric tons of carbon dioxide released. So energy consumption at such a massive scale is a serious problem and needs attention. Thus, our main focus in this paper has been aimed at reducing energy consumption in data centers through a tiering approach. Moving on to the related work section, there have been several research works focusing on efficient data storage technologies. One such work was made by Hauman and Peter, which estimates future energy consumptions of data centers and provides a theoretically efficient solution by considering a mix of storage technologies. There's also been studies where it is proposed that data centers should be split into primary and backup tiers. It is said that the third replicas of data in many storage systems are mainly introduced for durability and not for read performance, which can be leveraged to use a low-cost storage medium for such backup tiers. Another study was made by Dinkar, Sitaram, H.L. Falachandra, Sai Vishwas, and Sameer Kulkarni for the sole purpose of achieving energy-efficient storage architecture. This was done by spinning down some hard disks to a low power state in order to conserve energy. We shall now move on to our proposed solution. So speaking of popular storage devices, namely SSDs, HDDs, and tape drives, each offer their own pros and cons. SSDs offer the best latency and read-write speeds, consume moderate energy while being the most expensive and having smaller capacities. HDDs offer large storage with moderate performance and cost while consuming the maximum energy of all three devices due to the extensive moving parts. On the other hand, tape drives are bulk storage devices that offer best energy efficiency and affordability, as well as moderate read-write speeds. But this does come with the downside of huge latencies. So in this paper, we present EcoStar, a cost-effective tiered object storage architecture modeled for OpenStack Swift. EcoStar effectively employs SSDs, HDDs, and tape drives into a single storage architecture. While traditional Swift is not device-aware, EcoStar, on the other hand, takes into consideration the specific characteristics of each device. By leveraging the right device at the right tier, the energy efficiency as well as the performance of the system is increased.
Moving to the architecture of EcoStar, EcoStar is a tiered object storage architecture modeled for a replication factor of 3. Initially, when objects are written, 3 replicas are created and 2 of them are uniquely placed into HDDs, and the third replica into tape drives. SSDs are placed in the performance tier, which is used to store the more frequently used data, thereby increasing the performance of the architecture. EcoStar is configured with a staging layer capacity equal to 10% of the total HDD capacity. HDDs are placed in the capacity tier where 2 of the replicas are always present and can be used for serving requests when not found in SSDs. We have also introduced a highly energy efficient layer which consists of tape drives where only the third replicas are placed. Data residing in tape drives follow eventual consistency and are rarely used to serve requests. The proxy server, highlighted in blue color, acts as an interface for serving client requests. It holds the replica to node mapping for each object and routes the incoming requests accordingly. Upon a read request, in case of the object is present in the SSD layer, it gets served by the SSDs alone. When absent, the proxy layer requests for the object from both the HDD nodes containing the replicas, and the faster one gets served. Simultaneously, the object is also copied to the SSD staging layer. For an incoming put request, a new replica to node mapping is created by the proxy server, and the object gets returned into the 2 primary HDD nodes as well as the SSD staging layer. This is because every incoming object is treated as hot data. Data is not written immediately into tape drives, and hence it follows eventual consistency. Once the new object is returned into the SSD layer, the proxy server checks if the capacity of the staging layer has reached its upper threshold. In case of exceeding the threshold capacity, a hot data identification algorithm is run that prioritizes the data based on several parameters, such as recency of access or frequency of access, or it can be size of the objects. The relatively cold data identified by the algorithm is being flushed out of the SSD staging layer to the tape drives until the capacity of the staging layer reaches a predefined lower threshold. The cold data is queued into the tape drives so that SSDs can concurrently serve requests without delay. Moving on to the implementation part of the EcoStar, we have evaluated EcoStar by using the workload generated by CloudGen, which is a synthetic workload generator capable of simulating the workload of cloud storage services. CloudGen was modeled by studying the usage scenarios of Dropbox customers. Since Dropbox being a large file hosting service having around 500,000 users worldwide, deals with all sorts of files and that vary by various sizes. This helps in making CloudGen a more realistic workload generator for object storage systems. For a proper evaluation of the architecture, we have implemented both Vanilla Swift as well as EcoStar. Various flushing algorithms were implemented and compared to improve the staging layer efficiency. The one thing that we noticed when implementing the flushing algorithms, that the performance of the flushing algorithm is purely dependent on the nature of the workload. And there is no such single optimum algorithm that we could find. A more efficient architecture can be built by designing an intelligent algorithm which can dynamically alter parameters such as recency, frequency, or the size of the objects based on the nature of the workload. And this can be taken up as further enhancement work in future. We have simulated a large and realistic data center using CloudSim Disk, which is an open source cloud simulator which enabled us to model and build a data center with storage devices and scheduling policies of our choice. CloudSim Disk is a scalable module that enables energy-aware storage simulations of the architecture. CloudSim Disk also allowed us to configure the disk characteristics as well as the power characteristics of storage devices. The data center that we set up on CloudSim Disk is as follows. We implemented a large-scale data center in a similar hierarchy followed in today's world. The hierarchy consisted of regions, availability zones, aisles, racks, and data nodes. And the availability of the objects was improved by placing the replicas of objects across the hierarchy in a unique as possible manner.
So now that we've seen the implementation and the working of the architecture, let us talk about the results. So the most important factor here being energy consumption. Let's start with that. So we used a variety of workloads to test our architecture, two of which are shown as sample in the slide. The results collected across various workloads show a significant reduction in the overall energy consumption in the disks, with an average of about 25.83% reduction. The architecture tries to serve as many requests as possible using just the staging layer of SSDs. Now, SSDs being more energy efficient compared to the HDDs, we see this as a significant contributing factor to the reduction in the energy consumption. Moreover, tape drives practically consume no power in an idle state, whereas HDDs consume a significant amount of power. Since the architecture replaces 1/3 of the HDDs with the tape drives, we are able to achieve a huge energy reduction. Moving on to the performance factor, now since all the requests are by default routed to the SSDs, efficiently identifying the hot data and constantly migrating the cold data to lower tiers drastically reduces the read response times for our architecture. Since tape drives are rarely being used to serve requests, this does not affect the performance of the EcoStar architecture greatly. Along with the immediate entry of each write request into the SSDs, they also scope for improvement with regard to the write latencies in EcoStar. So average response times for both read and the write requests were measured for both Vanilla Swift and the EcoStar architecture, and the results can be seen in the graph on the left. The results showed us that there was a reduction of about 27% in the read response times, while not much of a difference in the write response time when compared to Vanilla Swift. EcoStar also offers a reduction in the architectural setup cost. The architecture replaces 1/3 of the total HDDs with tape drives. Now, this is a primary factor contributing to the significant reduction in the cost. Multiple HDDs can be replaced by a single tape drive, owing to the large difference in their capacities. EcoStar offers a reduction of about 19.3% in the architectural setup cost when compared to Vanilla Swift. We also did implement few hot data identification algorithms, and it was noticed that the performance of these algorithms was highly workload dependent and varied with the different access patterns in the workload, a sample of which can be seen in the slide. As a concluding note, though the usage of tape drives comes with its advantages of durability, reduced energy consumption, we do trade off on a few factors here. One being the availability in case of failures due to the high access times associated with the tape drives. And secondly, while tape drives offer the most affordable setup cost, the handling of the tape drives is a highly manual process. Loading and unloading of the tape drives may require human labor. Now, a possible solution to this drawback would be to use automated tape libraries, but implementing this at a large scale in data centers could turn out to be slightly expensive, bringing down the cost advantage provided by the traditional tape drives. EcoStar proves to be particularly efficient for data centers that deal with data where the third copy is mainly introduced for durability and not for their read performance. A common use case could be a file hosting and backup service like a Google Drive or a Dropbox. The SSDs and HDDs will be used to serve the requests, while the third replica in the tape drive can be used to provide added durability and security. Hence, we have conferred that a tiered architecture leverages a variety of disks for specific jobs to be more energy efficient and better performing than the native storage architectures. As part of further enhancements or additions to our EcoStar architecture, an idea would be to build an intelligent staging algorithm that would use machine learning techniques to recognize workload patterns dynamically and use that to manage the object in the staging layer more efficiently and to achieve energy efficiency in this way.
I have a quick intervention here. Is the slide sharing stopped or is there a problem there?
Oh, is it? I'm sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, Sanjay, can you just bring it up quickly?
Yeah. Maybe you should just go back and then start again. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really sorry. And at what point did we miss the slide share?
If you go back, I can tell you where we missed. No, this was there.
Okay.
This was there.
Okay.
Conclusion.
This one, I think, is
The results of energy.
being discussed about, especially the two tables which are right and bottom.
Okay. Sandhya, can you please start with the energy consumption?
This is also covered, Mohan.
Is also covered?
Yeah, I think we lost you at the conclusion, Sanjay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So from the trade-offs, suitable use case and further.
This was there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'll just go ahead from here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, talking about the trade-offs that we have when using the tape drives. So one being the availability in case of the failures due to the high access times associated with the traditional tape drives. And secondly, while tape drives offer the most affordable setup cost, the handling of tapes is a highly manual process. So the process of loading and unloading the tape drives may require some human labor and effort. A possible solution to this problem would be to use automated tape libraries, but implementing this at a large scale in data centers could turn out to be a more expensive method. So bringing down the cost advantage factor of the traditional tape drives. Now, EcoStar proves to be particularly efficient for the data centers that deal with data where the third copy is mainly introduced for the purpose of durability and not for the read performance. A common use case would be a backup service or a file hosting system like a Google Drive or a Dropbox. The SSDs and HDDs will be used to serve the requests, while the third replica in the tape drive can provide added durability and security. Hence, we have conferred that a tiered architecture leverages a variety of disks for specific jobs to be more energy efficient and better than the native architectures that we've seen. We intend to further improve this EcoStar architecture by building an intelligent staging algorithm that uses machine learning techniques and methods to recognize workload patterns dynamically and use that to manage the objects in the staging layer to achieve a greater energy reduction. Thank you so much. So this completes the presentation on the work that we've done in the paper. If everything's good, we would like to open up for a quick Q&A session. And if you're on time.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a question from Dr. K.V. Subramaniam.
Okay.
I'll read out the question. Can you highlight what workload was used and how does it model real-world characteristics of object storage?
Okay, talking about the workload used, we used okay, so talking about the workload used, we actually made use of a CloudGen, which is a synthetic workload generator, which was basically built based on the usage scenarios of Dropbox customers. So, and since Dropbox deals with a variety of files and which vary a lot in size, it enabled us in it gave us a very realistic workload, and we could generate results in a very realistic manner for the EcoStar architecture. And the results, we have actually generated results for various workloads of various sizes, but we have only plotted the ones which we could probably, like, say which one of which is the read intensive and one of which is like a balanced kind of workload. And if you can see in the workload characteristics, the total read traffic for the first workload is around 62.9 TB. And in the results, the difference between the SSDs and the HDDs energy consumption can be clearly seen for the first workload. This is due to the fact that most of the read traffic was being served by the SSDs, and the HDDs were being put in an idle state, and the requests were served by the SSDs. When compared to the write intensive workload, more and more requests were forwarded to the HDDs, and SSDs have consumed a very less amount of energy. So when the workload becomes more and more read intensive, the performance of EcoStar also increases.
Any other question?
Yeah, Sridhar here. One quick question. You used the tiered storage to say what is the energy consumption savings, right? Using this EcoStar. So how about performance? When you go with the tiered storage you proposed, is there any impact to the performance, or performance stays at the same level?
So I'll take that question. So, so talking about the performance, when it comes to the read response times, we were able to see a significant difference between the vanilla Swift and our architecture. But when it came to highly write intensive workloads, we were not able to see a significant difference. So performance works better in case of a highly read intensive workload for us.
That is again due to the fact that SSD staging, like by the use of SSD staging layer, and by identifying more hot data and migrating them to SSD layers, will reduce the actually will increase the performance of the EcoStar architecture.
Okay, thank you.
If nobody has questions, I have a few questions to ask. So there is this Dropbox usage patterns that you had as your base data. Is that open source?
Actually, the CloudGen is a tool used for generating workloads, and the CloudGen tool is an open source. So
No,
the tool
I didn't ask about the CloudGen tool. I'm talking about the Dropbox data.
Yes.
Remember, you're saying that you had used the real life Dropbox usage as the basis for constructing the load?
Correct. The thing is, the tool, the CloudGen tool, was actually built on top by studying the usage patterns of Dropbox. So the whole tool, the CloudGen, is based on the usage scenarios of Dropbox. So whatever workload that we generate out of CloudGen follows a similar trend how Dropbox usage scenarios are.
So the output of CloudGen would be in terms of get and put.
Actually, it will be yeah, kind of a get operation, put operation, like an update and delete operations, and we'll have to slightly convert it into a different format which CloudSim disk uses, which is the simulator that we use to generate results.
Okay. The second question that comes into picture is the distribution of this workload across the three types of storage that you have: the HDDs, SSD, and the tape.
HDD and tape drives. Okay.
So, how did you go about that? What are the assumptions being done there?
So what happens is we have followed a replication factor of 3, which most of the data centers in today's world follow, and we are placing the replicas in such a way that there is always 2 replicas of of the same object present in the HDD layer, and only 1 replica is placed in the tape drive. So if we talk about a single data, it is present both in the HDD layer and the tape drive. It's just that the 2 replicas are present in HDDs. And as and when the usage pattern is studied, we kind of move the hot data, which we call for the most frequently used data, to the SSD staging layer so that it can be served faster and in an energy efficient manner.
Do you make assumptions about the size of these SSDs, HDDs, and the tapes that comes in?
Actually, we looked at the actual disk characteristics from the manufacturers, and we have configured CloudSim in such a way that it uses the same configurations which the manufacturers have provided. So we have looked into factors like latency, rotational latency, read speed, write speed, and as well as the idle state power consumption and active state power consumption, which the manufacturers have provided.
So when you try to say that you're moving your content from the HDD to SDD as hot data, on what basis do you do that movement? Because it's like something like caching, right?
Yes, correct.
So there should be there's a cost that gets factored in, because SDDs are costlier than HDDs, which are costlier than the tape drives.
Correct. Yes. So firstly, what we have introduced is SSD. The total SSD staging layer capacity is 10% of the total HDD capacity. So if even though we look at the cost factor, like in the setup cost diagram, which is shown in the top right corner, you can see how much the SSDs are contributing, since they're only 10% in size. And to answer the question of the caching algorithms, we have looked into algorithms such as LRU, FIFO, and the frequency-based algorithm. And when it comes to the performance of these algorithms, it was purely based on the workload type.
Okay. So, so another small quick question: Swift, Vanilla Swift does not have any of this hierarchy in the storage. Is that what you're claiming?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And have you put this CloudSim into the GitHub so people can download and play with the simulation?
Actually, CloudSim was another tool developed by somebody else, and it is an open source. Yes.
No, not CloudSim. I'm not talking about CloudSim. I know about CloudSim.
Okay.
Raj Bhuya is also a steering committee chair for our conference.
Okay.
So Balachandra would like to speak.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Dr. Mohan, the one question which I thought Sanjay probably I could add into what Sanjay said was the 10% which you asked about. How did we arrive into the 10%? Why couldn't it have been 2% or 5% or 10 or 15 or 20? There was a number of experiments conducted. We actually tried out with multiple percentages of SSDs as part of the staging area. And what we found was there was significant advantage which you could see with 10%. We didn't see the same with, we didn't see significant gains with increasing the size of the cache, or basically the staging area to 15. And we found that 5% was not good enough, whereas 10 was most ideal. That's how we arrived at that.
Okay.
Just to add into what it was. So I thought I could just add there.
So I just was curious whether the outcome of your work, has that been put into GitHub? Not the CloudSim, but this simulation have custom done.
Okay. Sir, no, sir, it's not available
Not
as of
available.
now. But we are planning to publish it with more like the coding. We are just making sure it's more in a systematic manner so that others can also understand.
So I think
So there is a plan to put it on GitHub, sir. That's it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Really nice. I appreciate your lot of questions that you could answer, and I am sure the half an hour for this paper got over now. And on that note, we'd like to thank you all. Big round of applause. Nobody can hear you though. Okay. And
Okay, sure. Thank
I'd like
you, sir.
to invite the next paper to come and present. Thank you so much. Yeah, there are a lot of smileys that one can put. The applause can be in the symbolic form.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So, Shashi, can we have the next set of authors come on board?
Yes, I'm bringing them.
Okay.
Srinivasarao Kundeti. Srinivasarao, could you accept? Yes. Okay.
Sir, can you please invite Ahmad Sami?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, time starts now.
Yeah, Ahmad, we can share your screen. Let's start. Thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
Yeah, is my screen visible to you all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the problem we worked on was sub-object data augmentation and custom loss function for automated anatomical landmark localization in 3D MR image. And in this presentation, I will be introducing the authors, introduction and motivation, challenges faced, solution, results, and discussion. So among the authors, Srinivas Rao, Sumit, and Jeevan are from Philips Research, and Afzal is from Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad, and I am from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And I'm currently working in application of AI in healthcare, chemical, physical, and mathematical science. Now, let's look at what are landmark points. So landmarks are specific points or curves present in all the individuals which describes a specific location or topology. And these landmarks have many applications. In medical images, with the help of these landmark points, we can perform planning, segmentation, and regression tasks. So as an example, in MRI scans, usually planning is done in the initial stages of the scan to align the scan. And it is done by experienced technicians. And with the help of landmarks, we can automate this process and save a lot of time and manpower. And deep learning method with cloud is performing well for landmark detection. So now let's look at the challenges faced while finding the landmarks in 3D medical image. First, we are handling 3D medical volumes, and which is huge in size, 256 cross 256 cross 250. So as we were using the free resource GPU given by Google Colab, it's not possible to use very complex architecture, and which requires more computational power. And second, the shortage of availability of landmark annotated 3D medical image data. So all the data set we use for training and testing was manually annotated with the help of a specialist. And there is a huge difference between the contrast of boundaries between medical and natural images. Like in medical images like MRI CT and X-ray, few unit change in pixel can be a change from blood to bone or water, etc. So even our architecture should take care of these issues too. And to address these problems, we came up with three solutions. One is data augmentation part, to increase the size of the data set and use it as a regularization method. And second is a CNN architecture, which we used. The architecture we used is 3D flatnet architecture. And it's a CNN architecture which does not contain any upsampling, downsampling, fully connected or pooling layers. And this helps in retaining the information even with this small contrast between the boundaries. And these architectures prove to work well with medical data sets like MRI, X-ray, compared to the architecture which contains upsampling, downsampling, and fully connected layers. And we also used custom loss functions to achieve better performance even with a less complex architecture. We use open source dataset like which is called OASIS 321 dataset was used for the training. And as told earlier, manual annotation of landmarks is performed, and these landmark points are selected such a way that it covers all the major anatomy of corpus callosum, Yeah, now let's look at the pre-processing part. So first, the image is rescaled to 64 cross 64 cross 64 cross 64 from the 256 cube size. And the ground truth landmark points are also modified accordingly. And in most of the deep learning method which used to find landmarks, they find coordinates directly from the images. But there is a limitation is that the input and output data are of different types, image and one is the coordinate. So to overcome this problem, we use heat maps of the landmark coordinates as the output. So the heat maps will be a 64 cross 64 cross 64 3D array with maximum intensity at the location of landmarks with a Gaussian filter. So here you can see the 2D view of this, and actually in our case it's a 3D image. We use data augmentation to address the lack of availability of annotated datasets. And we tried different data augmentation policies to compare all these data augment policies with our architecture. So in data augmentation policy 1, we use rotation, scaling, translation, and Gaussian smoothing filters with the help of Symbol ITK library. And in data augmentation policy 2, we use elastic transformation using EMOG and Symbol ITK library. In data augmentation policy 3 and policy 4, we use DeepMind library to perform rotation, scaling, translation, shearing, and deformation. But in data augmentation policy 4, instead of applying the augmentation to the entire image, we plan to apply augmentation to the sub part of the image, so which is called sub-object data augmentation. So in this sub-object data augmentation, first we create a mask around the region we want to augment, and we crop a specific part of the image. Then augmentation is performed on that specific part, and then this cropped image is stitched back to the original image. So here the main challenge was to find the new landmark point after the augmentation is done. And this is achieved by performing the same operation on the heat maps which we created earlier. As I told earlier, the flatnet architecture is a CNN architecture which does not contain any upsampling, downsampling, fully connected or pooling layer. And in the first and second layer, different dilation rates are used consecutively to deal with different morphologies. And the output of the second layer is concatenated, followed by convolution layers to get the outputs. And ReLU is used as activation in all layers except the final layer. In the final layer, we use TANH as the activation. And Adam is used as optimizer. Now let's look at the default loss functions for landmark detection problem and crashing of that particular loss function in our particular problem. So a MA of the output heat map, MA between the output heat maps and the true heat maps is took as a loss function. In this, for high dimension sparse metrics, the error will be small due to average. So we can look at this by using this small example. So here I used a 3x3 matrix. So here you can see like the middle 2,2 position have the high intensity and rest all is 0. So this is as a landmark point. And we are neglecting the fact of Gaussian for easy demonstration. So here this is a true and this is a predicted output. So the error MAE is 0.188. When I increase the size of this array to 5 cross 5, you can see the MAE reduced to 0.132. So similarly, in our case, it's a 64 cross 64 cross 64 matrix. So the error will be really negligible and the loss function crashes. So to overcome this issue, we use two custom loss functions, which is like soft argmax loss function and mask loss. In soft argmax loss, instead of taking the error between the heat map, we find the landmark points from the heat map and then take the error between them. So here we just have to unravel the index of the max intensity position in the array. But here we can't use predefined functions in Python and all because these functions are not differentiable. So while making some functions for the deep learning algorithm, the thing we should be noting out is the function should be differentiable. So we need to come up with some arithmetic operation where the output should be the index of the max index of the max intensity position in the matrix, provided that function is differentiable. So this is the simple math we use to achieve this. So to understand this, we just have to look at the 1D array which I gave in the right. So assume that here B. So for easy understanding, I just made it to 1D. In our case, it's 3D. So here B is a 5 cross 1 array, and in which the third index having a maximum intensity and rest all position is 0. And so here B, let's assume it has a heat map. And A, we have the position. Each position has the index values. So if we element-wise multiply these A and B and took a sum, then we get the answer as 3. So this is same as the value we are expecting. So we just have to scale this to the 3D. But the main disadvantage of this loss function is that it does not consider the point around the landmark points. So as I told earlier, like we use Gaussian filters to in our heat maps. So here in the case soft argmax loss is not taking care of this Gaussian filter. So we came up with this masked loss. So in this masked loss, what we are doing is that instead of taking the loss of the entire matrix, we are just taking the loss in the area which we are interested, and that is the area surrounding the landmark points. So here what we are doing is that, like at first we will take the absolute error between the true and predicted heat maps. Then we will element-wise multiply this result with our true heat map. So in true heat map, we only have a positive value with for the landmark and the surrounding points, and rest all places are 0. So when we multiply it, we will only get the error in the region which is required. So in the same example which I used in the previous slide, the 3 cross 3 matrix, the mask loss gave a loss of 0.9. Okay, we done this. We use TensorFlow as a platform to code this architecture and all. And the 3D flathead model was trained using 3-4 cross validation, and we had 103 unaugmented ground truth data, and we split it into 70 and 33 training and validation split. And after data augmentation, we had 300 data sets, and we split it into 200 and 100 training and validation sets respectively. And we also have 63 data sets which we separate data sets we use for testing the network. And the model was trained for 150 epochs with early stopping and with patience of 20 epochs. And Adam is used as a learning parameter with a learning rate 0.001, and the parameters beta 1 and beta 2 0.9 and 0.999 respectively. So now let's look at the results. Like we used 3 metrics: mean absolute error, mean Euclidean error, and root mean square error to evaluate the performance of our model. So from this table, we can see that just changing the loss function from softmax to mask loss, there is a significant improvement in the performance. And we can also see that, like, while applying different data augmentation policies, we are getting the performance of our model is getting improved. And while using mass loss and data augmentation policy 4, which is the sub-object data augmentation policy, we got the best results. Even in this box plot, we can clearly see that like the mean of the results we got from the mass loss is less compared to what we got from the soft argmax loss. And even from this bar graph, we can see that like while applying with unaugmented data and while applying different data augmentation policies, the performance is getting better. And in both the loss functions, the performance is getting better. And the best performance is given by mass loss and sub-object data augmentation combined. And as concluding, we found out that this 3D flatnet architecture is it's helpful in detecting the 3D landmark points. And mass loss function is giving better results in all cases as compared to soft argmax losses. And the combination of sub-object data augmentation and mass loss improved the result by 43% compared to using just soft argmax. And as part of our future works, we are planning to train the model without rescaling the images and include more landmark points so that we can include more anatomy of the brain.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Open for question.
Yeah. So the floor is thrown open for questions from the audience. So Dr. Sanjay Chitnis, Professor KVS, Professor Rajat, Dr. Gopal. All right. I think while they come up with the questions, let me check if there are questions here. Okay. There aren't any here right now. If nobody's got, I have a few questions. So
yes,
Srinivas. So first question is, you have a huge set of data points, data sets, and the image size is there. You reduce the image size. What kind of attenuation or loss did you find there? And how did it affect the landmark identification and landmark usage?
Yeah, like as I told in the slide, like so the main difference between this medical image and natural image is like the contrast between the boundaries.
Maybe
so reducing the image.
Slide number 2 or slide number 3 of yours, if you could share.
Yeah, wait. I'm sorry. Yeah. So like here, like as it's a huge size and it's a 3D volume, so we need a high computational power. So it's without rescaling, it's very difficult to train. So while after rescaling, like so that is the reason why. Look, so in practical purposes, what we are expecting is a result with less than 1 mm. So, but whatever results we are getting is on like 5 mm and all. Like we expect that the reason why we are getting the result 5 mm instead of 1 mm is because of the rescaling factor. Like we are rescaling it by too much, like 64 cos 64.
So you say computational needs are so high. What did you all use to do all this?
We use free resources from Google Colab to do this training.
Okay. So did you get it into the terabytes? How many such MRI scans were there that you worked upon?
So like we used like 103 MRI scans, which was unaugmented. After augmentation, we had a data set of 300 different MRI scans.
Okay, unaugmented is 103. And how many terabytes or gigabytes is that? The size of your files, because the computational power in Google Colab.
Yeah.
Right? After some time, you need to start paying them for the usage.
Yeah, like I think it's a Google. The Colab is providing a free GPU of I think 8 GBs. Yeah. So like.
So what was your? How did you manage to use it within the free mode, or did you all pay for it? So that's
No. Yeah, we use the free mode. The few reasons like the paid mode is not available in India. So like we were forced to use the free mode. And like we came up with the 64 like we just calculated like how much memory will be required while running through the architecture. The thing is like we can't reduce the architecture much too. Like if you reduce the architecture much, then the complexity of the architecture will be really small and much training won't happen. So we came up that while using 64, it's an optimal amount. Like we can use sufficient amount from the GPU, and that still the training is happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how long did it take you all to do this computation with the 64 by 64 by 64 3D image, 3D matrix?
Yeah. So like that for the training, like the Google is providing only I think 12 hours of pre-GPU support.
Right.
So like if it went about 12 hours, what we did like we save the weights and we train it like after. Yeah.
Well,
so we start the training from there.
Wouldn't that affect your outcomes?
No, like
you make
so,
the claims
about
the flatnet on these constraints on the free mode of collab imply that your outcomes may not be as appropriate or as true as you think it could be.
Yeah, like what I'm saying, like if we are able to use the full image size 256 plus 256 256, the output will be like better compared to what we are having right now.
That I know. I'm talking about the practical work that you all have done, right? Srinivas, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. So one of the thing here is we are trying to save the network and load. So because the data is similar, we didn't face any drop in the precision and sensitivity, for example. So we also have tested this with our local GPU when we don't need to share with the students.
Okay.
So there also we have some better results around let's say around 2 mm is what we are getting currently with further more optimizations.
Okay.
But just for dumping the weights and reloading it back for every 12 hours, we didn't face any loss in sensitivity or precision at that level.
There must be some particular loss or sensitivity. Was that like what kind of percentage was it, and how much was the threshold below which this was, so you could kind of say you didn't face any loss in sensitivity or precision?
Yeah, so we have also tested.
A more precise statement from you would be nice,
sir. So we have tested with a smaller set of samples. So now he is showing 106. So with 50 set of samples, first we have verified this, sir.
Okay.
And 50 and 75 and 100, we have checked the trend basically.
Okay.
Before we increase all the epochs and full hyperparameter tuning with all augmentation of 300 data sets, we have checked the trend for 50, 75 and 100, which we have not put it in the paper. Like the doubt you expressed, we had this doubt. So whether there is a drop in precision when we reload our weights.
Okay.
So we have done the trend analysis to see how much sample size is good enough to maintain the precision.
Okay.
Secondly, for the transfer learning, like you rightly pointed out, dumping the weights and reloading them. So the gradient descent starts from different weights that were already learned instead of random weights. So we also checked this impact. So at least for these two aspects, this network, whatever network we tried to use, that did not degrade much. Like it was around the 5. So we have also tested with our local system.
Okay.
So we have not put forward all the improvements in this paper. So we have only wanted to convey that with low amount of resources and with some few optimizations on the strategy. Like he was telling to save the network, load the network, or reduce the image size and train a 3D image on Google Colab, which is free. Okay. So we want to demonstrate these kind of points for others to just make use of these resources. And also our caution is, if you go to the flatnet I think this is also a journal paper which was already there, but then we have improved to made modifications. It was a 2D flatnet that was published.
Okay.
So, sir, here we have taken care of, if you see the parallel branches, L1 and L2.
Right.
So, this L1 and L2 rows, you can see there are two boxes. On the left side, there is a box, and on the K, the right one is a K and left one is an I. So, what we have taken care here also, why we selected this architecture is, so as we increase our landmark points,
Okay.
so these branches we can increase or decrease.
Okay.
So the I and K, whatever we have put here, currently we have 5 branches here, 5 landmark points. So we also wanted to take care of the resource constraints. So now we have trained with 5 landmark points here.
Okay.
So now tomorrow, this is not a, let's say, a clinical scenario in medical cases. So maybe we need 7 to 8 anatomies in the brain, and maybe 80 to 90 landmark points. So that is what we are looking at the end of the use case. But what we want to ensure is, we want to ensure that it is scalable. The network that we are training is scalable per landmark. So we have introduced these parallel branches to extract the features.
Okay.
This is another point.
Yeah. Quick question. So these images are all what, proprietary, or is it like available for everybody to look at?
Yeah,
Where
so
did you put the images, the 3D images?
Yes, sir. These are OASIS images.
Okay.
And this data set is publicly available. The only point is they have made the segmentations available.
Okay.
So for the corpus callosum, cerebellum, and all what we are showing, the segmentation parts are available. If you can go to that slide, Ahmad. So what the clinical expert did is taking the segmentation part, go to the corpus callosum. Yeah, so this is the segmentation they have provided for everyone to use. So what we did is, on this segmentation, we have taken certain endpoints on the genu and on the splenium.
Okay.
So why we have taken that is, the important point clinically is the F5 and F2. So if you draw a line there, we can understand that on the sagittal view how much the head is tilted.
Right.
If the patient is tilted, so that all the other parameters we can adjust based on that. This is one view of the
This is what you all did to augment the existing segmented data of the scans that was available in the OASIS.
Yes, you are correct. So go to the next slide, just Ahmad.
I think these details are kind of missing in your paper. Are they there? I doubt it's explicitly written down.
Yes, sir. I think to some extent, like if you go to the next slide, Ahmad, go to the segmentation data augmentation slide. So here, sir, that corpus callosum, what he has colored in the bounding box. So the mask that used is the OASIS mask one. It's a public data mask one.
Right.
We use that mask, and then we have come up with this bounding box. We have fitted a mesh for that.
Okay.
So that is a cropped and deformed corpus callosum, the second image. And then if you can see, the original corpus callosum is not deformed.
Right.
But the deformed corpus callosum, the third picture, shows a dent in the middle area.
Right.
So the idea here is, we made use of the public data.
Okay.
With the labels, but we didn't make it used to predict the segmentation. Instead of that, there is an additional manual effort that was put. Using the segmentation as a guidance, we made these landmark points. We derived the points. But in the pre-processing step, we made use of the same mask, which is visible for everyone.
All right. And that details you're not very explicitly mentioned in your paper, did you?
Yes, sir. So we have not said that the same mask is used or something, but we have said the mask is used for augmentation.
Okay.
And OASIS data set details are mentioned in the data section.
Do you have a medical doctor, a neurologist to help you on these matters, or how is that?
Yes, sir. So coming up with the points. So if you can go back to the segmentation, corpus callosum. Yeah, so only we are having the top part from the
Right.
public data set. So these dots which are there were put by the
Neurologist.
clinician.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Mohan, time up.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. So that's a very good discussion. Thank you so much, Srinivas and Ahmed, and all the folks from Philips Research, from Allahabad, from IIC. I think good. So on that note, I think we'd like to thank you. A big round of applause for you guys. Here we can only kind of send out some nice emojis. So thank you so much. We'll go to the next session and back to Shashi.
Yeah, we will end this full paper session now, and we'll move on to short paper session.
Thank you all for this
Thank
opportunity.
you.